Good afternoon, everybody. It's very exciting to be here and see so many people. I know their faces, names, or books, so it's really impressive. I'd like to start by thanking Lucy and Stella for organizing the event and the Honor Frost Foundation for inviting us, myself, my students. It's really very impressive. The Marsa Bagoush project is what we have been working on since 2015. And it's still an ongoing project, and Marsa Bagoush is located 250 kilometers west of Alexandria. As you probably know, most, if not all, underwater archaeological work along the Egyptian Mediterranean coast is taking place in Alexandria only. So we have several hundred kilometers of coast with no one looking there. So we decided that we are not going to look in Alexandria at all, and we're going to go look somewhere else. This is where Marsa Bagoush came. The site of Marsa Bagoush was known in antiquity as Zigris, and some documents have mentioned this site. Claudius Ptolemaeus have defined the site as one of the anchorage along the Mediterranean coast, and the most exciting statement was from the Stadiamus Maris Magni, which is, as you know, a guidebook from the 3rd century AD, stating that Zigris, the site of Zigris, is located at about 90 stadia from a site just east of it, which is Leuki Acte, and there is an island or an islet in Zigris, and he's advising boats to put into the place with this islet on their left side, and there is water in the sand. This is what the guide says. So this is Alexandria, obviously, and here's Leuki Acte, and exactly 17 kilometers or 90 stadia, as he mentioned, we find Marsa Bagoush. It's very accurate measurements, actually. Here's Leuki Acte, and here's Zigris or Marsa Bagoush, just to the east of it. And there is the islet, which he described, and anchoring inside the harbor, you put the islet on your left hand, and there should be water in the sand somewhere, so you have to look in the sand. The bay is very convenient, as you can see, for anchorage. It's very nice. Most of the time it's calm. Maximum depth is about 9 meters, which is more than enough for an ancient ship. And the first sort of survey that was done to the site was in 1861, and it was carried out by the British Navy. In 1861, they surveyed the area and they drew the first map ever of the site, and it was published in one of the Naval Surveying Service reports. And here's Marsa Bagoush, and here's the bay, and this is our first evidence of something there. In the 90s, in 1996, the INA, the Institute of Nautical Archaeology, carried out a limited survey there in this area, and I was part of that survey, so I have been there in the 90s. And what we were able to locate were only 2 amphoras, actually, 2 single amphoras, Egyptian one and I think Canadian one, and that was all, because the time was very limited and the conditions were not very good at all. However, many years after that, I realized that the site actually contains the summer camp of the university I work for, which is very nice and very convenient. So every year there are students going there and staff members going there to have their summer vacations. So this is where our first interaction with the site came, and it was in 2010. And accidentally we came across piles of concreted amphora while visiting the site, and our first support actually came from Nicolas Grimal, which I'd like to thank, and from the Gorghini Foundation, and they funded this first very early expedition in 2010. So we went there. We decided that the site actually needs some serious work. It took us some time to get official approval from the Ministry of Antiquities, so it took us about 4 years to secure the permission, but we finally got it in 2015. So we needed more funding, and this is where the Honor Frost Foundation generously stepped in. We had the project supported by the foundation and by the British Council office in Egypt. So our initial thoughts were going to the site, surveying, conducting a systematic survey of the area, and trying to digitize the seabed, making some 3D modeling to use for teaching, as a teaching aid basically for students who cannot dive, and design a management plan for the site. This was initially our ideas. And as we went to the site, we start realizing that it's much extensive than we expected, actually. There are a lot of remains there, obviously of shipwrecks in more than one location, quite extensive piles of concreted amphora from different periods, as we're going to see in a minute. So the plan started getting bigger and bigger, and the ideas started getting more complicated. And obviously, as I mentioned, different time periods are involved. So from probably the from the Hellenistic period all the way until the Islamic era. Anchors, concreted amphora, intact amphora, different types of anchors, and it took us a few years, couple of years actually, to record almost all the remains in a map. So we have now a very good idea about what is inside the bay, the location of all the patches of concreted remains, and as well as the different types of anchors. Then we went into the 3D modeling step. So I have to just minimize this and go to the movie because it's not working simultaneously. So it's just a few seconds. So we try to develop different 3D models of the different locations and introduce this to students in our university in different departments, archaeology and history, and those who cannot dive, but still they are keen to understand what's going on underwater in an archaeological site. So the 3D modeling phase is still going on. The site is quite big. And to get back to the presentation, sorry. Okay. So last summer, we decided that we will raise some samples for dating purposes, obviously. So we chose about 30 samples of diagnostic amphoras, so we can date them and try to understand what's going on in this site. Several amphora, and we have more than one expert sitting here, so I have to be very careful of what I say, are Egyptian types. They have been studied extensively by Sir Alex and Johnny Van Preur, and they have been found all over Egypt. So this is typical Egyptian amphora, Roman amphora, late Hellenistic to early Roman amphora. So this is the majority. So obviously this boat was carrying or amphora going somewhere. The production of this type of amphora comes from different locations in Egypt, but mostly from the Maritime region, which again I was lucky to work with Lucy Blue on this site for several years. And there are plenty of amphora production sites dedicated for the production of this type of amphora, the AE3s or the Amphora Egyptian 3. However, in addition to the AE3s, the boats were only, or the site also contained a variety of other types of amphora, as early as the 3rd century BC and as late as the probably the late Roman period. This morning only I was asking Johnny about the dating of one of the amphoras we found with a stamp on it, this one. And he said it's from Cnidos from the 3rd century BC, which is probably the earliest we have in the site. So in addition to amphora, we have roof tiles, several parts of them, several pieces of them, and we have wooden fragments. And then from a totally different time period, we started getting glaze pottery and Islamic artifacts. So probably this is another entirely different shipwreck in the same site. This season as well, we extended our search to a little bit further from Bagoush. And in the same document I mentioned, the Stadiamos Maris Magni, the text says that from Zigris, from Bagoush to Ladimantia, there's 20 stadias, and close there's an island, large island, and boats should put in with this island on the right, and there is a harbor accessible in any wind. So just going further, I think we located Ladimantia, and this is the island that the guidebook speaks of. And there we located 2 Admiralty anchors, and I think this is an indication of that the harbor has been used all the way until the 19th century, 20th century. This bay is still to be surveyed. So despite what we found, we still had a pending issue that the documents mentioned water in the sand, and we couldn't find any water in the sand until last year. So last year, or actually this year, a few months ago, we just went looking in the sand. And I had to sacrifice some of my students doing this because it was very hot. But we were lucky to start finding actually water in the sand. We found, first of all, we found one cistern containing water still there. And then we found a third, fourth, a fifth, and a sixth, and I found up to 12 holes with water still in them. And the natives are still using them. So they are pumping this water and using it for irrigation until now, which is very exciting. Well, finding them was not enough, so I had to sacrifice more students actually to get inside the systems to try to document it. And I hope they're going to forgive me for this because they're all sitting here. So they actually bravely enough went inside the systems, and we found an extensive network of underground cisterns. The kids just keep going and going, and they are connected, interconnected, some of them as long as 40 meters, and they still have water in them, as you can see. There is still more work to be done there, obviously, but it's very exciting. Actually, it was very exciting for us. Also, there are some inscriptions there that I'm still, trying to locate the proper expert to study them, but I mean, this is something that has to be looked at even more carefully. The system was, the system was documented, measured as much as we could, but we had very limited equipment with us at that day, just cameras basically. So we did a quick 3D photogrammetry, and Muhammad here, who is in charge of this. And this is when we realized that they are actually interconnected together and extensively running for several hundred meters. So now we have located water in the sand, and we have located the shipwreck sites. These are in the openings of the cistern system. And we kept moving in the desert, and we found as well some tombs, which was not expected at all. So this is probably early Roman tombs. So it seems that it's not as simple as I thought in the beginning. It's not just an anchorage with some boats coming in and out. There is something going on there. There's a lot of water, and there is a tomb, and there must be a residence area as well. While researching, I started realizing that the site was actually very important during World War II, and it was a base for the Royal Air Force. During World War II, there was the North African Squadron 113. They were relocated and based in Marsa Bagoush for exactly the same reason, because there was water in the sand. The abundant access to fresh water led to this settlement or this camp. And again this season we start locating World War II remains, fortifications from World War II, and I think as we can keep going in the desert, we keep going finding more remains that are related to the site. So these are more fortifications from the site. What is actually interesting this season as well, and I'm still thinking about how did this happen exactly. The map that was documented in the 19th century, if you can see the one on the, the mouse is not, is it? Okay, here it is. The bay is entirely closed from both sides. So there is sand in this area, and there is sand in the other area as well. So this is very convenient for boats. This is how it was in 2004, but this is how we found it from 2010 to 2016. So the sediment parts here have vanished, have disappeared, which make this site is not very hospitable, if I may say. During strong wind, this is quite windy. However, when we went just last month, it was like this again. So something is happening here. It's eroding and sedimenting in certain ways during during time periods. So was this happening as well in antiquity? Because if this was happening in antiquity, that might have affected how the site was used, the frequency of using it, and the cause of shipwrecks actually happening inside the site. And these are all questions that we have and we are looking for answers for. The site is also very convenient for training, and this is something, again, with the foundation we are keen on doing, on designing a field school there in 2019. Over the past 3 years, about 20 of our students have been trained on different activities and aspects of underwater archaeology in that site, specifically in this area. So what is the future holding? We are very keen on extending our survey underwater to the north and to the west, recording the underground tunnel or the system using laser scanners, and radiocarbon dating, hopefully, some of the organic material like wood and bones that we found last year, and do some sedimentological analysis. I think it makes sense, and also I'm keen to develop some sort of a management plan to the site so it can be used rather than just sitting there. So it can be used by students, visitors maybe, just the public at large. That would be really useful. At the end, I'm really honored by this invitation from the Honor Trust Foundation. I'd like to thank the foundation, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities, the Ministry of Higher Education, and the British Council, and every and single one of my team, those who are here and those who are not. And we need more supplies of students because we are losing them, as you can see, in tunnels. So thank you very much for your listening. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Okay. There you go.
Thank you, Emad. That was like, sorry, Professor. It's great when my students become professor.
So should 21 to open?
I'm waiting for the rest of them to do so before me as well. It's amazing. I had no idea. You need a site though, don't you? You know, like some settlement on the land. Any questions? Lots. It's just like a question monger. Okay, go on then. Nobody else has stuck their head out.
No, I'm just curious whether. Are you doing it on purpose? Just a quick question: has the survey done in 1861? Did it reveal any archaeology?
No, it's just a coastal survey that was done along the north coast of Africa, and this is what they have produced: just maps of different locations, and that's all. No.
So were they like putting divers in the water?
No. It was it's Admiralty. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Naseem.
تفضل.
Have you got a red light?
Is this on now? Okay.
Yes.
Very impressive. Just to start with, very impressive stuff. It's very exciting. For the amphora, I just wanted to ask if the data has been started to be quantified and analyzed in terms of where they came from or anything.
No, not yet. We're still working on this.
Okay.
Oh, if you want to join us, you're most welcome. Yeah. We just raised these samples like last month, so we're still sorting them out and trying to date them on this one.
It's very exciting because it looks pretty diverse.
Yes.
It comes from
obviously it has been used for a long time. Yes, and the Islamic bits is very interesting because we have never seen any Islamic shipwrecks in Egypt.